So today we're going to do something really different. I actually have my producer with me here live. And what we're going to do is she's going to ask me questions about medical topics that have been in the news. I'm not prepared. She did not give me the list ahead of time. And she's just going to bombard me and get my reaction to things that have been in the news this past week. I'll do my best to give her my insight. Everybody, welcome Shannon. Shannon, welcome live to the show. I know you're always behind the scenes, but today you're here.
Thank you, Dr. Baktari. So the first thing that I read today was Flurona. Don't know if you've heard of this, but there's some new cases in the US this week for the first time ever where people are having COVID and the flu at the same time. What do you make of this, and have you heard of it?
Yeah, I heard of it. I think originally it was reported in Israel and now here. Don't know a whole lot about it, but of course, it kind of makes sense because this is like the peak of flu season. The viruses don't really have like instructions like, hey, I'm going to infect Shannon. You don't infect her. It's my turn. So obviously, they don't really compare notes. So, yes, it is possible to get both, especially if you're in the height of flu season and we have a rip roaring variant going through. So, how surprising that would be, right? So, it's sort of like, you know, going out on a rainy day and seeing more than one car having their windshield wipers on. I mean, obviously, it's that time of year. It's flu season, and we're going through a raging variant right now. So it wouldn't be surprising at all.
Okay, so this is to be expected, and is it something that we should be concerned about?
Well, it should be in the sense that I think, you should be, getting your flu shot. A lot of people think like, okay, I got my COVID shot, so definitely your flu shot. And of course, just, be cautious when we know the flu does what it does, mainly in the winter for many reasons, but partly because people are more indoors, interact more with people. And so, the precautions we're talking about, just limiting your exposure, good hand washing, wearing a mask when appropriate, especially indoors and in crowds, and, social distancing when you can do it. So all the things that we talked about, and with flu, a lot of hand washing because flu is very much transmitted, from shaking hands and having hand contact. So that's doubly more important during flu season.
Okay, so another thing that we're hearing is the Biden administration is now urging people to accept COVID as a way of life, much like you've talked about in many of your videos, making it more of an endemic rather than a pandemic. What do you make of
Yeah. Do I have to answer this? Can't I just refer people to my endemic video? Can you provide? No, I'm kidding. I'm more happy to. Yeah, but provide that link anyway. But yeah, obviously now we're on variant number 4. We had the original, and then we had the Gamma, the Delta, and the Omicron. So I mean, what is this? What is this COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2 virus telling us? It's telling us that it's an upper respiratory virus like every other coronavirus before it, and that it's going to mutate and come up with new variants like it has for decades and decades. So is it surprising? No. And I think we've talked about this in this other videos. So, I know sometimes we're the first people to say it, and then later on it happens, as you've seen. But no one's going to be surprised. I'm not going to be surprised when everybody gets a yearly COVID shot, probably in the fall of every year on top of this series that we've got now. And so to that extent, yeah. But, some of the data coming out is, for example, the Omicron may be less virulent, maybe because everyone's already gotten it or gotten the vaccine, or it may be a more typical cold virus where, remember we talked about upper respiratory and lower respiratory? There is some data that suggests that Omicron is more of an upper respiratory infection and not a lower respiratory infection. Maybe you could provide a link to that video too, since you're the one that does it anyway. And I've got you here. I can give you instructions live. But yeah, so I think the upper respiratory versus lower respiratory may play a role in that. And to that extent, it is becoming endemic. And we've talked about that multiple times
So
that's that.
Another thing that we're starting to hear is fourth round of boosters. What can we expect with new boosters?
Yeah. Israel's doing that to everybody over 60. It kind of makes sense after a few more months to get another booster. But really, this is really a slow way of avoiding coming out with a new version of the vaccine, right? Because, if it was up to me, I just say, you know what, all good and fine. Let's just come up with a multivalent vaccine, which we have the technology for. I just think there isn't enough political will to, I just think people are going to say, oh, another COVID vaccine. I'm tired of it. We have COVID vaccine fatigue. And I think from a public health point of view, I think there's a thinking potentially that it would be a hard sell to roll out a yet new COVID vaccine. But that's really where we're headed. So you want to give a fourth dose? Okay. Yeah, that certainly is going to help, especially after, 6 months of getting your last dose, especially in the people at high risk. It kind of makes sense. But what would probably make more sense soon is just to come out with a new version of it that covers Delta, Omicron directly, as well as the original, and just come up with a multivalent mRNA vaccine that covers it all. That's going to happen. I just think the political will and the COVID vaccine fatigue is preventing it from coming out now. So rather than do that, we'll just give a fourth shot. And it will work. I mean, it will, for people whose antibody levels is dropping, it will work. But just as long as you bring this up, this antibody level is one thing. But the good news is that, and I think this is why this, even if you don't get the fourth dose, you're less likely to die, is because we have this thing called cell-mediated immunity or T-cell immunity. And those T cells seem to be, doing their job even after 2 or 3 doses. So that's why it prevents large number of people dying, even if they didn't get the fourth dose. So will the fourth dose help in terms of antibody levels, and will that make the cases potentially less severe, especially in people with risk factors? Yes, but I think the long-term answer is to come out with a new version, which we will, and you heard it here first. We will. We just have to have the right timing where we don't have COVID-19 vaccine fatigue.
So what do you think about this? So this is something that people are kind of up in arms about and are very confused. So what do you think about the recent recommendation of reducing the isolation/quarantine period from 10 days to 5 days?
No, I hear that. I think that's simply a balancing of public health concerns versus, the economy, not totally falling into the ditch. Clearly 10 days is better, but at what price? So I think this is a sort of a public health versus economic calculation where, yes, the vast majority within 5 days, should be okay. Is it 100%? Probably not. But it's close enough for government work, as the joke goes. But it is close enough in terms of having, airline staff return to work and not grounding planes forever and businesses functioning, what have you. So it is a compromise. I think in the vast majority of cases, it will be fine. If you wanted to be ultra careful, the 10 days is probably better. But on balance, it seems that it is a balancing of, health concerns versus the economic concerns. But if you have the luxury of doing the full days, I tell people do the 10 days. But some people don't have the luxury. They've got kids, they've got this, they've got that. And will the 5 days, given the specific way the CDC presented it, do the trick? Yes. Is it bulletproof like 10 days or as bulletproof as 10 days? Probably not. So there you go. Shane, I'm getting a little concerned if you wind up doing so well that people may start watching you and want me out. And you could take over this show, and we'll see what happens to our viewerships after this. But I'm hearing footsteps and getting a little concerned here that you're taking over the show. But go ahead. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Shan. Thanks a lot for doing that.